Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And if you want to keep up to date with all things clown decade, please do subscribe to the channel and of course become a member. And we have quite a bit to get through today, so we'll, start from the beginning I suppose. I would advertise my other Epping video that I would suggest watching first, but to be honest with you, most of you probably already get the gist of what happened. A whole bunch of migrants were put into a hotel in Epping, it was put next to a schoolgirl was allegedly sexually assaulted by one of the migrants. Locals get very, very angry. Some people come along to take advantage of the chaos, and some police stuff is damaged. The people causing violence, very much against them. The vast majority, 99% of the rest of the people who were there to complain about the infringements on their peace and rights, absolutely justified, and I am with them 100%. But one thing that happened in Epping was that it was caught on camera by quite a few people that the police were escorting socialist worker banners, stand up to racism banners, along with a few lads in masks who pretty much everyone has concluded is Antifa, with little evidence, but really you don't really need more than that circumstantial evidence to make that conclusion. Well, it turns out that the police did take pro-migrant protesters to the asylum hotel, so the Telegraph are catching up with everyone else. Police have admitted to escorting pro-migrant protesters to an asylum hotel at the centre of the day of volatile demonstrations. Essex Police initially denied that it had brought activists from the group Stand Up to Racism to the Bell Hotel, amid claims by anti-migrant protesters that the arrival of counter-demonstrations sparked the violence on July 17th, and as my video goes through, I make the same conclusion. It was relatively peaceful until a whole bunch of policemen turned up with a whole bunch of people who were both masked up and others obviously with the placards saying, "Let everyone in." It was only after that you started seeing bottles and things like that being thrown, and obviously that raised tempers, and it was around that time that, let's say a lot of the women started filtering out. However, the force backtracked after being shown footage of the protesters being escorted by officers from a nearby station to the hotel. Not only that, they were shown being put in the police vans to be driven away, as they ran a couple of people over. On Wednesday, Essex Police will hold a press conference at which it is expected to explain its policing of the demonstrations. It came as Angela Rayner, the Deputy PM, admitted that mass migration is threatening community cohesion amid growing fears over another summer of riots. Oh, you don't say. I'm glad that our Deputy Prime Minister is now going along with the old Island of Strangers line that her boss decided to throw out and then try and backtrack on, and then once again try and throw out again. Basically no mainstream politician actually has any sort of coherent ideology. They will just say things that they think gets them votes. And well, obviously with Farage rising quite rapidly in the polls and sticking around 29 to 30%, it looks like they are going to try and move more and more to the right without really knowing what to actually do about it, because they have, well, no coherent ideology. That's the thing we can at least say with Reform. There is some sort of coherent ideology. Is it perfect? No, but I'm not expecting it to be. Anyway, speaking of Reform, Lee Anderson decided to, take a little trip over to Canary Wharf, as, he happened to be in Westminster that day, given he's an MP, and had some news for Twitter. Here's his little social media stint.
So a bit of an update for you. Just spoke to the local commander. He tells me that the hotel now is being prepared to accept asylum seekers. So the rumours are true. It's a pity that some of the police officers didn't know, some did know, and absolutely furious. This hotel here, by the way, I mean, it must cost a couple £100 a night to stay there. Most normal people in this country would not even be able to afford to come and stay here for a weekend, but we've got illegals coming, and hope the protesters remain peaceful and don't get to bother. They seem like a quiet bunch at the moment, but let's hope it's all peaceful.
Yep, and this is the type of social media reporting that I am quite happy with. Obviously, nobody wants a large-scale fight in the middle of Canary Wharf. However, the anger is palpable and everyone can feel it. I mean, pretty much everyone has been made aware of what happened in Epping, and Epping, quite frankly, wasn't even that bad. But we're going to get a couple of examples of palpable anger even in the middle of London, which in most people's minds, especially Tucker Carlson's, effectively has no English people whatsoever. It's not quite to that point, but it is still surprising when you see English people around areas of London. There was a bit of back and forth, though, as to whether the hotel was actually being used to house asylum seekers. Local news, however, confirmed it, saying Tower Hamlets Council confirmed that a hotel in Canary Wharf will be used for asylum seekers. The announcement follows protesters demonstrating about immigration outside Britannia International Hotel in Marshall today. At the time, there were unconfirmed reports circulating on social media about the hotel being used to house asylum seekers, and a spokesperson for Tower Hamlets Council said, "We are aware that the government's decision to use Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf to provide temporary accommodation for asylum seekers. It's important that the government ensures that there is a full package of support for those staying at the hotel, and we're working with the Home Office and partners to make sure that all necessary safety and safeguarding arrangements are in place." And as we go down in the article, this is why I believe this is a move from the people, well, the illegal migrants, being put in the Bell Hotel in Epping are being moved here, because it's simply just, it's clearly not safe for them in Epping, because there's been basically a week-long protest where pretty much every time there's been a bit of violence going on in Epping, so the idea is just effectively to bust them around the country until they find somewhere where they don't end up with that sort of, well, reaction. The problem is, as we will see, that they are always going to get that reaction, because ultimately the problem is they are in the country full stop, and this is what Labour seem to be misunderstanding. They keep saying, oh, we'll no longer use hotels, as people are getting annoyed at that, and so their bright idea is, oh, just put them in council housing or get Cero to buy up a load of tenant housing and we'll pay to stick them in there instead, which, if anything, is going to make it worse, because you're just making the housing market worse. The reality of the situation is that even if it costs more to deport these people are happy to pay that, because the psychic cost, the social cost, and the, well, safety that people feel by not having strangers put all around the country obviously outweighs the financial cost of, well, paying for planes to take them back, well, take them to Rwanda, take them back to France, just take them anywhere, really. Anyway, I'll read the article. It follows demonstrations in Epping at the Bell Hotel, which Essex police said had turned into mindless thuggery. Demonstrations in Epping last Thursday were after a series of protests since the 38-year-old asylum seeker Hadush, I can't read the rest of that name, was charged with sexual assault after an incident where he is alleged to have attempted to kiss a 14-year-old girl. Oh, she was 14. Again, though, this is still alleged because he has not been convicted of it yet, but the anger is so palpable that innocent until proven guilty is not something people are really bringing to mind here, because ultimately the issue is much wider than this. And it's as quite a few people are saying, and especially Cero of Reform is saying, an awful lot of these illegal migrants are coming from countries where there are high rates of sexual assault and violence. Afghanistan, Albania, for two examples. And simply put, people don't want them here. They haven't wanted them here for years, but the Tories allowed them here for years, and Labour are not going to be the party that sorts this out. Come on. Anyway, this confirmation came after GB News asked the Home Office if Canary Wharf is being used for illegal immigrants. As you can see, according to Patrick Christie's, they were categorically told by the Home Office, no, that is not happening, and now it turns out that actually it is. Why couldn't they just be honest, Patrick asks. Well, the answer is because they know if they say yes, there's going to be total outrage. Either that or it's miscommunication within the civil service. That is actually more common than you think, by the way. But either way, it is atrocious that they would say no when they've already been caught red-handed, pretty much. And the council obviously know it's happening, and it's obvious why it's happening. It's because they're just going to start trying to bus illegal migrants around the country, as I say, until they stop getting protests. And, well, they've chosen Canary Wharf, I guess, because it was available. The thing is about this hotel, it's 5 stars. It's one of the best hotels in Britain, and that's not even an exaggeration. And Lee Anderson was not joking when he said most people would not be able to afford this. For 2 nights, it cost £932. It's over $450 a night to stay at this hotel, and at your expense, the Home Office has decided to put a number of illegal migrants in there. Is it any wonder that this is one of the... In fact, it's probably the most unpopular government ever. It's more unpopular than Liz Truss, consistently. Everyone hates it, and yet nobody seems ready to have a general election yet. Everyone's just co-signed to the country getting worse for the next 4 years. Basically, everyone's come to the conclusion that it's Clown Decade. We have to get through this awful time to eventually get to the good times, because surely there's people in Britain who want the country to get better and will work for it. And as I keep saying, I think that answer is within reform. Anyway, there are also videos of guests who were expecting to have a stay at the hotel in Canary Wharf, and, well, they got to the door and effectively they were told, "Oh, sorry, your booking's been cancelled."
Why you still online there's a booking? You are told the agent to stop the booking.
This is one guest in a thread of about 5, I think, the Citizens journalist managed to find, where they'd literally come up to the door, show them the booking, and they'd be turned away. Just, they've been cancelled. People coming over to go to a £400 a night, or more actually, it's more than £400 a night hotel, and being told, sorry, not happening. And the reason for that is because they'd rather refund all these people and get more money off the government to house these illegals. That is what's happening. The government has outbidded all these people, and that is what we are going to be seeing with homes of multiple occupancy, tenant flats, things like that. We've already had videos and news of people being kicked out of their rented homes to make way for illegal immigrants. We are literally seeing that happen, by the way. This is what the government is doing. It is taking your money to then outbid, in this case, tourists, but in worse cases, people renting their homes, some of them single mothers, by the way, to make way for illegal migrants because they don't know where to house them and they do not have the political will to leave any sort of international treaty on human rights or anything like that to deport these people. They have to be treated better than you. That is what the government thinks, and that is how they act. And this isn't just Labour, this was happening under the Tories as well. Let's remember that. And this is exactly why we ended up seeing, well, sites like this, just a whole bunch of protesters turning up. And from what I understand, again, these are relatively local people, obviously not from Canary Wharf itself, it's probably way too expensive for the average person, but from areas that are not too far on the tube line. It's very good public transport in London. And obviously it did not take long for the Rozzers to turn up, tactical support group and a few police motorbikes. And it's quite clear that the relatively local people, once again, have had enough.
Why are you ladies here today outside the Britannia Hotel?
I'm here today because I've been waiting nearly 19 years. I'm homeless with 4 children, and I've been up the housing several times, many years, and they turned around and said they've got no properties, they've got no room for me. They shipped me out to Ilford about 5 months ago. They took me out of my support network, they took my children away from their schools. The children have failed all their exams, and one of my children got sexually assaulted on Elizabeth line, and now she won't come out of her bedroom. My kids are isolated and they've just ruined my life. And to feel like this, they could put me in this hotel, do you know what I mean, with my kids, and let them live a little bit.
Yeah, we just keep hearing horror stories. That's all we keep hearing about this issue. My life is terrible, it's not being helped by the British state, and yet here we are hearing about them spending £450 per person per night for a 5-star hotel for people who've come over, broken our laws by default, and they're effectively being treated like kings with professional escorts and things like that, where I'm just allowed to be homeless and my life and my children's life has effectively been made a living hell. And nothing seems to get done about it. You know, sexually assaulted on the Elizabeth line. Did police get involved? Anything like that? No idea. But one thing we have seen from this is that the police are happy to get involved with these protests. And it's also part of the reason the government are just completely and utterly paralysed. They can't take away winter fuel allowance while they're spending a ridiculous amount of money on asylum hotels. And then it's even more ridiculous that their way of trying to get past that is effectively get the green rubber stamp out and make them all legitimate. How do you stop illegal immigration or just make them legal? Wow, that's going to help.
So my daughter suffers with severe anxiety, dyslexia and everything. She's worked from the age of 16. She's 28 now, had her first child, and that's a private rent out of London because they will not house her here. So she's got a baby now on her own with none of her family around her, stuck over out of London because they will not house her here.
Yeah, again, it just feels like foreigners are up the pecking order on the, well, natives, if you want to put it that way, but if we're going to get into the legal framework, the citizens of Britain. And it seems that every step the government takes is just another reason to absolutely despise them. I do not blame people for being angry. Hell, I'm angry. I just move somewhere where they're not likely to put asylum seekers. And I'm quite open about that fact. Part of the reason I was happy to move to Wales is because, well, you tend to avoid these problems. Anyway, there was a Green councillor who ended up turning up and, well, I don't think she was quite getting the reception she expected.
I just think it's really, really important for people to understand that there are no safe and legal routes for refugees to come to this country. This is the only way they can come here. It's on a boat to pay. Yeah, they've got the whole of Europe. Why should we put that burden on the rest of Europe?
I mean, as I say, she's a Green councillor, and these are just complete NPC opinions I would expect from a Green councillor, but ultimately councillors basically have no power. That's pretty much what I've learned from pretty much every Reform councillor that I've been in contact with. So her having these opinions are basically meaningless, but they are of course very, very silly. We do have safer and legal routes to get here. We found out one of them was actually hidden from us when it came to Afghanistan. But she's a Green councillor, so she basically is advocating for open borders here, which is why they should be voted out every opportunity you have. I almost guarantee that most people who vote Green don't actually know their policies whatsoever. They just think they're effectively nice young people.
But do you not think
we still have to take responsibility for the fact that we have a lot of stakes in the conflicts and the climate crisis that causes people to be refugees and have to come to another country.
I mean, this is how low information Green councillors and Green voters and Green members are. We have halved our climate emissions. We've literally halved our CO2 emissions from its peak back in the late 1800s. Might have been the early 1900s, actually, I'm not sure. Doesn't really matter. What I do know is that we have done probably more than any other country to decarbonise, and we have absolutely nothing to show for it other than absolutely humongous energy bills. And obviously people that say it's not enough and say on top of making everyone poorer, you also have to bring over the entire planet. It's ridiculous. It's an absolutely crazy opinion to have. Argue against it every moment you can. I'd say it's probably unwise to do this, though.
Of our fucking children, you silly cunts! Of our children! Of this fucking right, you silly cunt! Fuck off!
Let's face it, as funny as a lot of people found that, including myself, it's not exactly doing anyone any favours. I can understand the anger. I can completely understand the anger. I am, of course, angry too. And I'm not going to have too much of a go at this guy because I understand the anger, and of course, we don't know what the guy's circumstances is. You know, he might have family or friends who have been negatively affected directly by illegal migrants coming over. As I say, it sounds like a lot of people have horror stories. But I think a much better way of dealing with this, which again I don't expect everyone to be particularly good at, is to act like this, because, well, she became quite famous yesterday.
Like, sexual assault is awful and it needs to be prosecuted, but we can't paint everyone with the same brush. Like, they're not, or you can't just see a refugee and say I'm a refuggy and immediately
But they're hundreds of times more likely to rape and sexually assault.
Please give me some statistics to look at. I'm not seeing anything statistics.
You can look at the percentage of Afghans who have come over here in the migrant hotels who are being arrested for
some of the most vulnerable people in the world, and we're just going to have more of them, and we're just going to have to understand and accept.
No, that's not true. I did a documentary in 2020 on small boats in Dover. One of the guys I spoke to over there, he came from Iran. He paid £30,000 to make his way over here, and he said, I'm a construction worker, I just came over here to get jobs. That's what they're all doing. Is that not true?
It's not what they're all doing. I have a friend who works in the asylum management system in the Netherlands, and I can tell you that the stories that she comes across of people who are like they're exposed to all sorts of
illegal migrants not welcome to the Isle of Dogs.
It derails a bit from there, but ultimately Jack Callis here is doing the correct thing, just bringing up statistics and trying to get them to defend themselves, because the best they can do is say, what about these particular cases in the Netherlands? And then the obvious easy thing to say after that is, oh, by the way, these people are told to lie. Here's the BBC literally trying to infiltrate these gangs, and they're being told, oh, you know, when they say they want to pay to cross the channel, they're told, oh, by the way, when you get there, lie about your situation. A lot of Albanians, actually, they were told, say you're in debt and that's good enough. It's clearly not a climate crisis thing. There's basically nobody coming over because of the climate crisis. It's just not happening. I don't think I've ever seen either a legitimate or even a fake asylum claim that involves the climate crisis. If it worked, then these people smugglers would tell people, oh, say it's the climate crisis, but they're not. They're saying, say you're in debt, say you're gay, say that you'll be killed for crimes you committed over in Afghanistan or something like that. That's what they tell them. And then that's assuming that it's not the government hiding the fact that they're flying a load of Afghans over who they know some of them were sexual assaulters, some of them were violent criminals, some of them were just the utter dregs of Afghan society who have come over to avoid persecution because they frankly deserve it. You know, they're the type of people who'd spend life in prison here but will be killed by the Taliban, and therefore they need to be here because human rights or something. It is a ridiculous standard that we are not in a position to apply. I mean, for God's sake, Britain only overcame slavery and stopped every other country in the world, pretty much, from having a slave trade when we were the undisputed biggest empire in the world. That's where you need to be actually be in a position to do what this Green Councillor wants, and we're obviously nowhere near there. And that's what people are getting fed up with. But I know it's tedious, I know it's boring, but this is the way you argue with these people. You force them into situations where they have to defend their absolutely ridiculous positions, and they struggle with it, quite clearly. It's the only good way you come out of these arguments. You don't shout at them and call them C words. Even if, let's be honest, we find it quite funny. Anyway, not too long after this it started to rain, and these people started, counter-protesters I mean, started once again being escorted by the police. You can quite clearly see the Green Councillor being escorted as well, surrounded by about 10 or 15 officers, well, probably more than that actually, but a lot of police officers. You know, burly officers you probably wouldn't want to try and get in a fight with, things like that. And this appears to be the police MO at the moment, bring in counter-protesters, some of which are masked up, to be fair to them. I didn't see anyone masked up here, and I didn't actually see any stand-up to racism banners either. Let them all have their arguments, let things get heated up, and then escort the people they escorted in away again. It's a really weird tactic, and I don't know why they keep doing it, especially when, as we saw post-October 7th, you have all these people in the middle of London effectively celebrating a terrorist attack, and anyone with a sign saying Hamas are terrorists were escorted away. Well, it's too dangerous for you to counter-protest. This, though, well, apparently fine. So they clearly don't see a massive risk of things getting out of hand, but obviously, you know, riot police are only ever brought to these protests as well. Again, it really is not helping with the accusations that they care way more about the destabilising sides of British society than those that basically just want to keep it stable. Anyway, local news had some reporting on this, of course. A large number of protesters and counter-protesters gathered outside an East London hotel after rumours spread on social media that asylum seekers were being housed there. Turns out the rumours were once again true. They're not always true, by the way, but, well, it's astounding how often they are. Met police officers were seen guarding the 4-star, it's 4-star? I thought it was 5-star, Britannia International Hotel on Marsh Wall, Canary Wharf on Tuesday night. I have to change the title. There was video footage of hotel guests with reservations arriving at the site, but obviously they were cancelled, and there is also allegations that staff who were already working there were dismissed on the same day. Police statement last night said officers are currently in attendance at a protest outside a hotel in Canary Wharf. We had put a policing plan in place and will continue to monitor events. The force was contacted by the Standard for comment. Tower Hamlets obviously also confirmed that the Canary Wharf Hotel was being used to house asylum seekers. It's all just a joke. Again, most of the reporting I actually did in this video entirely down to, again, citizens journalist on Twitter effectively putting stuff out there, and obviously the typical thing happens with regime stooges. Oh, it's fake. Oh, this isn't true. Oh, it's an old video. And then it turns out that local journalism comes into it, because the Standard is a London paper, and basically confirms everything yet again. It's nuts. I mean, honestly, boy, do I have a video that is coming out later this week, unless something else crazy happens, where it just looks like it's a complete right-wing conspiracy. And it turns out it's not, and it's effectively about candy stores in London effectively being a front for one guy who ends up using all the profits to effectively push Islamism throughout London. I'm not even joking, but we'll leave that for later in the week. Tomorrow, by the way, I'm going through that Chemi article from the New Statesman. I'm giving a lot away today. Anyway, all this news comes out, and the Times today, reported this. Sir Keir Starmer is demanding urgent action from cabinet ministers to avoid a repeat of last summer's rioting after warnings from Downing Street officials that Britain is fraying at the edges. I think we've gone beyond that. I think that was the last 2 decades. I think we're at a point where, drastic action has to be taken, I'll put it that way. The PM told the Cabinet it was vital to repair Britain's social fabric and improve integration in areas that have experienced high levels of migration. Angela Rayner, the Deputy PM and Housing Secretary, said immigration was having a profound impact on society and warned that the diffused community tensions, the government needed to acknowledge real concerns about rapid change coupled with stagnant living standards. Alarm has been mounting at the top of government about a violent backlash as frustration over the cost of living struggles combines with an anger over immigration. Liz Lloyd, Downing Street's Executive Director of Policy and Delivery, told the Cabinet away day in June that social cohesion was fraying at the edges and public services were struggling under the strain of increased migration. There are fears of more unrest this year after protests at an asylum hotel in Epping led to the largest outbreak of street violence in England since last summer's riots. Again, it didn't even seem that big. Further demonstrations in Essex are planned, and Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, warned that Britain was close to civil disobedience on a vast scale, which basically everyone agrees with and can see. The problem is that telling the cabinet ministers to do something isn't particularly good enough. You as the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, plus your Home Secretary, etc., have to do more than put up illegal migrants in 4-star hotels that, as Lee Anderson said, barely anybody in the United Kingdom can actually afford at the moment. Anyway, I don't doubt there will be more protests today as, it appears that these migrants are being moved from hotel to hotel. They'll be moved away from the Britannia. I think it was supposed to be a small-term stopgap anyway until they got cheaper accommodation. But, with the fact that they're cancelling people's hotel stay at this 4-star, palace of luxury, really. Why wouldn't they keep them there for some time unless, things get a bit more out of hand, which I'm obviously hoping they don't do. I'm hoping they just finally see the error of their ways and finally deport these people, but I can't see it happening. Not at least for another 4 years. Anyway, with that, I think that's everything I had for you for today. So if you enjoyed what we do here, please do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. If you can spare a little change, please do become a member or leave super chats or super thanks. Great ways to help out the channel. Obviously, we didn't have Tosh News yesterday. I got a bit busy, so we will be having Tosh News tonight. Plenty to talk about there. Hollow Knight will be tomorrow. Laughing at the Guardian will be on Saturday. Videos out as and when I can make them. Right, with that, that's everything I had for you for today. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.